Let's talk some college football. We got some news because this guy does not stop working. And he doesn't stop working for you, the American people. John Canzano, the John Canzano Show, brought to you by Zeke's Pizza. Check out all his work at johncanzano.com. Check out the radio show that's burning up the airwaves, all right, at the Bald-Faced Truth there in Portland, 7:50 the game, 3 to 6 p.m. He joins us from the Puck Sports Studios built by Limbach Lumber. John, how are you? You ever cover the NFL Combine back in the day?
Not the Combine. No, I covered the NFL for one season. I managed to not be at the Combine, thankfully, and I had a good time covering that league. Saw some things.
Okay.
Covered the Raiders, covered the Niners. Got to spend some time with Bill Walsh. It was back in that era. He was a consultant with the Niners. It was kind of cool. Raiders went to the Super Bowl that year. It was interesting.
Not bad. All right. So coming up, we're going to talk about the current state of the Pac-12, some comments. We're going to play some comments from the San Diego State AD that's talking about the TV deal and partners, future of spring games. You're doing a series of the new look Pac-12. You spent some time at Boise that I want to get you caught up on. Get your thoughts on it. Also, gambling and college sports. And you wrote a great piece about your time spent at Fresno State. However, I do want to start with a piece that you just came out with probably, 30 minutes or so ago. The grant of rights deal that has been signed by the new Pac-12 conference members has some unique language in it when it concerns itself with Washington State and Oregon State. Tell our viewers what this new grant of rights deal has provided both those schools.
Well, these grant of rights deals, provide the conference. Really, all the members say to the conference, hey, we're signing this grant of rights. You now have the ability to go out and sell our media rights. We're in your hands. But they're often interesting because, as we have learned in the last couple of years, they include some interesting provisions about revenue sharing and voting and how if someone wants to leave the conference, what's it going to cost you, all that stuff. So I got in the weeds on that and looked at it, and something jumped out at me that there's some language in there that says Oregon State and Washington State hold the final approval. That's the language. Final approval on media rights deals, expansion decisions, and Pac-12 enterprises, among other things. But that, it basically says that Oregon State and Washington State, like everybody else, can vote on this stuff. And I think it was 3/4 vote to get the media rights deal done, 3/4 of the new members. So the 8 members voting, you'd need 6 of 8. But Oregon State and Washington State have to be among those voting yes. Otherwise, they can hold up a deal. So it gives them some unique authority. Now, I don't read this, and nor does anybody, I talk to a lot of people across the conference at Oregon State and Washington State and at other places who say they don't expect the Beavers and the Cougars to act like they're up on the Imperial Palace, giving their authority on these decisions. They just are granting sort of Oregon State and Washington State some extra power here because Oregon State and Washington State took the risk. They were left behind by the Pac-12. They filed that lawsuit. They invested their dollars in fighting the 10 departing schools. They salvaged the brand of the conference. As Teresa Gould said, hey, if anyone deserves a drink, it's the Pac-12, right? Remember at that media event last summer in Vegas. And so it's a nod to Oregon State, Washington State, and just basically gives them a thumbs up, thumbs down vote. But it tells me that in the room, Oregon State and Washington State's opinion about who you're adding, whether it's a geography decision or if it's Memphis, Tulane, South Florida, is it at one of the Texas schools? Is it back to UNLV? Tells me that Oregon State and Washington State and their voice matter in this more than anybody else, matter a little more. And again, it's, they have to act reasonably. It has that language in there. But I thought that was very interesting, Puck, that those two legacy schools have got sort of the final right of approval, the final nod on all this stuff.
So give me just the final nod of approval. When it comes down, the most important key things are what? The media deal, expansion, and what? Are those just the two main ones?
Media deal, expansion, and then what happens with Pac-12 enterprises? They're going to share the revenue equally among all 12 schools. But if decisions are made as to, Pac-12 enterprises, it sounded to me, and you're going to play the comments from J.D. Wicker later, the San Diego State AD, sounded to me like Pac-12 enterprises is involved in this, at least from a production standpoint, because Wicker was talking about distribution of other sports. That means that I think the Pac-12 is going to produce content involving other sports, like potentially baseball, softball, volleyball, other things. So it could be women's basketball, who knows? So, as it pertains to decisions, like, very early on, I was told that there wasn't unity in the room when the schools were out talking to Memphis and Tulane initially. There wasn't 100% unity in that room over whether the Pac-12 should extend the geography of the footprint and go after schools and look eastward and all that stuff that was talked about early on. They eventually retracted and went after Gonzaga. But it tells me, like, if Washington State and Oregon State aren't okay traveling and adding schools that are outside the footprint, that vote's going to be pretty loud in that room, because they could ultimately hold up the deal at the end and be like, hold on, we're not good with this. This isn't in the spirit of what we started out to do. And they have retained that right of authority under the grant of rights.
Great reporting here by John. And again, just go to johncanzano.com. Just reading from the latest article about the final approval in the grant of rights deal given to Oregon State and Washington State. Again, documents obtained by John at johncanzano.com. And again, outlines the new world of Pac-12's governance. The final approval isn't meant, as John said here and wrote, isn't meant to position the Beavs and the Cougs as two-headed czars of the conference. They're expected to act reasonably. And when I read this and I was thinking about, what if back in the day Larry Scott had given this to USC and who? Is it UCLA?
Yeah.
I guess. And we're probably not in this position that we are in now.
No. And by the way, this isn't just for this decision. This extends for the 5-year agreement. So inside of the 5-year agreement, if there are media rights decisions, if there are expansion decisions, Oregon State and Washington State have that final vote. Now, I continue to be told, and that there's a lot of unity in that room, of course, but because they're all brand new to each other and they're all moving in the same direction and rooting for each other. But I continue to be told that no one expects them to kind of be unreasonable with it. But Oregon State and Washington State in the 11th hour are going to get that final nod. And I think that's a really important distinction. I think it gives them, it dignifies the fight that they encountered, and going in front of Judge Leiby and taking on the 10 schools and everybody telling them they should just go away, and they didn't go away. It dignifies all of that work by saying to them, hey, you were the caretaker of this thing. You invested more time, effort, and resources in this. You get the final vote.
I think one thing that stood out to me in your reporting and what you looked at in the grant of rights is that the revenue sharing model that is now going to be performance-based. Schools that earn a berth in the college football playoff or the NCAA tournament now going to keep 50% of the net revenue. The other 50% will be split evenly among the other members. That seems very important to me.
Yeah. And this, look, the SEC and the Big Ten don't do this because the schools don't have leverage, right? The schools can't say, we're going to leave for the AFC West. Nobody, they can't say we're earning all the money. So they split everything equally. Oregon making the playoff, Ohio State winning the national championship. Rutgers gets a share of that. Northwestern gets a share of that. They have to split that evenly. The Pac-12 is going to be different. The ACC has adopted a similar model where if you go to the playoff, Boise State, you're getting 50% of that net revenue. So if you earn $4 million or $8 million or $12 million, you're going to take half of that right off the table. You eat what you kill, so to speak. I had one AD say that. And same goes for the NCAA men's and women's tournaments. And I think it's good because that incentivized Gonzaga, it incentivized Boise State to come into the fold going, hey, we weren't getting this deal in our old conference. We now are going to get to keep more of what we earn. That makes sense. But it also places a lot of pressure on the other schools that aren't investing in basketball and football. Like if you want to go earn money, extra money in the NCAA tournament, invest in your program, hire a better coach, have better resources, invest in your home arena. So it really does create sort of that secondary investment motivation for everybody else.
I want to go back to what you kind of touched on in the beginning. Why was this important for Washington State and Oregon State to have this language in this?
I think because, if you really look at them and you understand the brands of those two schools and the fan bases, that they have often felt marginalized. They've often felt left behind. They've been the and one when they're invited anywhere with the old world Pac-12. And because of their media markets, not their success or lack of success in sports, they got left behind. If Oregon State is located in Southern California, it's in the Big Ten right now, and same for Washington State. And so I think it was an added measure of protection for schools that had felt like, hey, we fought for this. They were the ones in that courtroom. I was in that courtroom in Whitman County. They were in front of Judge Leiby. It was Oregon State, Washington State. There was nobody else with them. And so as they brought Boise State and Gonzaga and San Diego State and everybody else into the fold here, I think they wanted to be able to say, hey, no matter how big you are and how important you are to us, we still want to make sure that this party is going to go how we want it to go. So we're gonna hold the right of refusal on hiring the DJ and the caterer and everything else. And I think there's a little bit of dignity in that for those two schools, and it feels appropriate given the they made an investment that was larger than the others. They own Pac-12 Enterprises together. They're giving away part of that in exchange for these other teams coming into the fold. So I think it was just their way of saying, we're not going to let the Mountain West 5 and Gonzaga run away with the conference that we saved.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Protect your own. Yeah. They should do that. They absolutely should do that. They have been pushed down for many, many years, and it's good for both of those schools to now kind of push themselves up. All right, you mentioned it a couple times. San Diego State, the AD, J.D. Wicker, had some comments, I think, speaking to season ticket holders at an event. And basically it's like, yeah, the media rights deal's coming. It's coming this month, and all the partners. I want to play this for our viewers of what the AD, San Diego State AD, J.D. Wicker, had to say. Oh.
They're entities that you're familiar with, that you would recognize. We're going to get great exposure, and the really good thing is we're going to get more exposure. It's not just going to be football and men's basketball, but it's going to be all of our sports are going to have the opportunity for this increased exposure. It's going to be increased revenue, which is a big thing for us. So that's really the next big piece. Once we know that, then we can go recruit that 8th football playing member. We need one more football playing member that has all of its sports to meet FBS rules or NCAA FBS rules. And then after that, we'll figure out if we're adding 1, 2, or 3 more schools, and whether they're coming in all of their sports. They might be coming in some of their sports.
So that's the gist of it. The biggest thing, sorry for the video cutting out in the beginning, was there a woman doing exercise in the front? She was kind of waving her arms.
Yeah.
Looked like she was doing
San Diego, baby.
All right. So what did you make of J.D. Wicker's comments there?
Well, he didn't say anything we haven't talked about. He didn't say anything that I hadn't reported, and I gave you March 20th as my deadline. He's saying March 30th. And so for me as the reporter who has, a duty to your viewers and my readers, I felt good about everything he was saying because I was like, okay, this meshes. He's not saying anything that surprised me there. I also think that he's excited. You can tell he's in front of his stakeholders. These are his season ticket holders. And an AD's job, part of an AD's job is to sell. That said, the media consultants probably weren't happy that he's out there talking about it. There's still some negotiating going on. Pac-12, I was later told by people at the Pac-12 offices that there was a little bit of a groan there because they didn't give him a green light to go out and talk about this stuff. He was kind of freelancing, and that happens. He's probably not aware. Somebody's filming it. It's going to social media. He should be.
He's focused on the girl working out in the beginning.
Yeah, he's selling. I mean, he's selling, and frankly, in his defense, he's not saying anything we're not saying, right? It's just now we have somebody who's in the room saying it and affirming it, right? So the bigger thing was they had a meeting yesterday. The ADs get on these meetings twice a week. It's a conference call. And yesterday in the meeting, he was not called out. He was not scolded. He didn't get his hand slapped directly. But they did talk about talking points and how important it is to not be out talking out of school. And this is what we're to stick to. This is what our consultant says we need to be saying to help them do their job. And I can tell you the other ADs in the room thought, this is for JD because he had been out talking. I like it because I like sunshine. I want to know what's going on. But if I'm the media consultant, I'm trying to play poker back there. This does create a little bit of pressure on the consultant to get a deal done. And I think what Octagon's got to do now is it's got to say, hey, end of March is not our deadline. Like, we can go on forever. Like, you have to play that way when you're trying to negotiate things. But liked what he said. He talks about the order of operations. We've talked about that. It's going to be media rights first, then it's going to be expansion. It'll be somewhere between 1 and 3 schools. We've talked about that. He didn't mention any specifically. We have talked specifics. But the other thing that he touched on was he said familiar partners. And he said this is going to be good for all sports, not just football. So it tells me that somebody involved in this media deal, one of the entities, is probably agreed to take content that is produced by Pac-12 Enterprises on other sports and distribute it. So you may be able to see whether that ends up being some kind of streaming entity where you can watch other Pac-12 sports, or whether that is specific to one sport. We don't know. The grant of rights does require the schools to carry football, men's basketball, women's basketball, and volleyball. So it's evident that those are rights that they were interested in selling, right? Because they want to do that. But this could involve Oregon State baseball. This could involve San Diego State's other sports. Who knows? But it tells me familiar. Is it CBS Sports? Is it Fox? Because that sounds a lot like the old Mountain West partners and some of the stuff they did there with the added element of the Pac-12 Enterprises on top of it. Is it TNT, who came up short in the basketball deal? Are they coming in as a basketball partner? I think there's a lot of swirling things out there, and JD got me thinking, but I don't blame him for talking. Others are mad at him for talking, but I kind of like when people involved, tell the truth.
What about ESPN? You think they're
Possible.
involved?
I think possible. I don't see like a huge appetite for ESPN, like to take the whole thing or to take all the football, but it's possible they could take a game, right? Or they could take a game every week, or, if you're the Pac-12, what you really need, because these other conferences like Big Ten has Fox, ESPN, SEC, ACC, you need a real partner who's going to bang that drum for you, who's going to make you the most important thing. So I'm less into ESPN than some others have said, because everyone says, oh, the glow of ESPN. But ESPN already has its priorities lined up. If I'm the Pac-12, I want to be somebody's most important thing, or I want to be part of something new if it's TNT carrying, college basketball, because it is shaping up to be a really good college basketball conference.
I would say this, whoever it is, that there's just as you know, a real golden opportunity, especially in that late TV window, because that was the thing that was really depressing this year, was not having Pac-12 after dark. That was just not a thing this year in college football. There was just games ending at 6 o'clock, 7, and then it's over. And you're like, well, wait a minute, where's the 7 o'clock window games that we've all grown accustomed to? I know we like to complain about them when you're traveling to them, but when you're not traveling to them, you like to sit down with a cocktail or two, your feet up on the couch, watching games until 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, or you're talking to your family. And John, no one wants that. No one wants to be talking to their family. They want to be watching football.
Well, it's possible that Pac-12 After Dark could be a standalone product that they sell to somebody.
Right.
But I think the bulk of this is going to go to one partner, and there may be some scheduling alliances. TNT's taken some Big East games in basketball in the next 6 years. Could there be some crossover games with the Pac-12 that TNT is interested in? I think there's some tentacles to this thing, and clearly J.D. Wicker at San Diego State is excited about this, and he's selling it to his fans, and you can tell that he feels good about it. It wasn't a guy getting out over his skis, and so as irked as some people are, as agitated as people got about him, oh, he's talking, oh, this is terrible, this reminds me of George Kliavkoff coming out. It's not at all the same. I mean, Kliavkoff had that circle of trust. He essentially was the only one, along with his media consultant, he was the only one who knew what was going on, and that's why I think the messaging was super murky. This is coming to me from all angles. I was hearing, hey, right around the start of March Madness, we've been talking about that for months. I'm also, I can tell you this, like Memphis, Tulane, South Florida, University of Texas, San Antonio, Texas State, Rice, UNLV, Nevada. I feel like that's the stable, Puck. It's 1 to 3 of those schools. Now, where they end up will, I think, largely determine on, who Oregon State, Washington State, and the rest of that conference want in there and what they're willing to pay for them and who's willing to move. But, I see Texas State as a real fallback down that list. People have talked about it high on that list. I think it's down that list. I think if they end up at Texas State, it was because they said, hey, you know what, we're going to punt and we're just going to take one and it'll be Texas State. But I think they're going to try to take a big swing first. Why wouldn't you?
How much does I don't know if there's any responsibility or reaction does the Pac-12 have now? I mean, they haven't formed this new conference. It's not happening for another year until 26, but they are welcoming a new school in Fresno State. What's their position right now? If people don't know, there's an ongoing NCAA and now investigation into Fresno State about gambling, point shaving, and just the gambling being improper with that. Where does the conference stand with that? What do you think the future is there with Fresno State? Does it hurt them going into the Pac-12? You wrote a great story about covering Fresno State back in the day when you worked at the Fresno Bee, just dealing with this. Where are we at right now with that athletic department and the
let's go back to 97 real quick. I mean, there was point shaving allegations. The FBI investigated. There was a grand jury that came in. No charges were filed. Nothing ever came of it other than a lot of people pointing to like some local gamblers and some small town activity and some real suspicious play that happened on the court. Like 3 minutes to go in a game, they blew a double-digit lead to not cover a spread. Guy who's a great free throw shooter, 80% shooter, misses 3 of 4 free throws down the stretch. He airballs one of them. It raised a lot of questions, a lot of suspicion. When the Mountain West Conference was formed, it did not take initially Fresno State. I am told by the WAC commissioner, Carl Benson, that the reason the Mountain West did not include Fresno State initially was the point shaving investigation. They were skittish about it. And Fresno State eventually got in, but it does show you that these conferences care. They don't want that drama. They don't want that cloud. Do you not have your act together? There's questions there. But Fresno State's already signed a grant of rights with the Pac-12. There's about 40 million reasons why they can't undo it. There's like a $40 million withdrawal clause in there. And I think the Pac-12, although it's disappointed in hearing what's going on at Fresno State, I think the Pac-12 just is watching to see how Fresno State handles this. Garrett Classy, the athletic director there, he did not hire the current men's coach, who's, by the way, 5-23. Vance Wahlberg is 5-23 in addition to this going on. They can't fire him for cause, they say, based on, the investigation so far, but 5-23 is a pretty good cause for me. I'm looking at that going, I think the Pac-12 is going to watch Fresno State and go, okay, are you acting like you belong in the Pac-12? Let's see how you act. I think that's where they are right now, but there's nothing they can do about this investigation or not inviting Fresno State. I think the Bulldogs are probably fortunate that this came out now and not a year ago, because maybe they aren't included if it happens before.
What do you think in your story about Fresno State? You have a piece in there, Michael Baumgartner, who's a representative in our state out of Spokane, Washington State graduate, who wants to introduce a bill on Capitol Hill. He wants to ban prop bets on NCAA athletics. How much legs does this have? And what do you think that the NCAA and I guess politicians, what steps do they need to take? Because we are hearing more stories about this, about NCAA and gambling and point shaving. Sports Illustrated's got a story coming out now about Jonte Porter and the tentacles of that. That issue that happened in the NBA with the tentacles now reaching into the NCAA with college basketball. What steps do you think they should and will take?
Yeah, I think Baumgartner told me he's going to introduce, if he hasn't already, some legislation that would ban prop bets on college games nationally, federal legislation. So I think he's going to get a lot of support there. I think he's even going to get support from some of the gambling lobbyists out there who are afraid that what would happen is you roll it back altogether, right? They may be willing to say, hey, no, prop bets are the problem, right? Everybody's saying, oh, prop bets are the problem. There will always be a problem. If you invite gambling into the room, you are inviting problems. You are leaving the chicken coop door open. And so this story by Sports Illustrated is fascinating to me because it's got, some bad actors who have their tentacles, their fingers on a bunch of different elements, college sports, the NBA. It cuts across. The prop bets are problematic because it's easy for a player to directly control whether they get a rebound or score a point or are available that game. I've got a bad ankle, I need to sit. So there's a temptation there that I think you'll also see some support for that, because I think in the state of Oregon you can't bet on a college game, you can't bet on the outcome of a college game, but some of the prop bets for some of the apps that are available outside of Oregon allow you to bet on games inside the state of Oregon. So it depends on, what provider you're with. So there's just a lot of murkiness there, and the anti-gambling, protagonists there are winning this week because everybody's going, man, this is really bad. And this isn't good for the game. It's not good for the integrity of the games. And you don't want this going on in college athletics or the NBA.
John, you're doing a series of the New World Pac-12, stopping by the schools that will be joining the new Pac-12 conference. Part one of that series was a stop in Boise, Idaho, to check out Boise State University. What was your takeaway from your visit with the Broncos?
Yeah, part of my thing is I just, there's some new schools here, and we not all of us know these places. I've been to Boise, but, a lot of my readers had never been to Boise. They don't understand the fan base, the history of the school, what made it go. And so, I jumped on a plane, and I'm doing this with all the New World Pac-12 schools. The whole series will be at johncanzano.com, but it's a chance to immerse in a campus for a couple of days and talk to the schools and talk to the coaches and talk to athletes and talk to fans and business owners. I talked to the Shakespeare Festival in Boise. I talked to, people who are running a cafe. It's just interesting to get their viewpoint on what makes Boise State, Boise State. And I'm going to do this with all the new schools. Spokane will be next, and Gonzaga. But it was fascinating to me because, you look at the history of Boise State and how it became Boise State. It was a community college that then became a Division II school that rose to become an FCS school. And then suddenly they're in the playoff. And by standards of college athletics, that didn't happen, over 70 years. That happened almost overnight by college standards, right? It's a lot like Florida State and what happened in Tallahassee. Goes from a community college into competing for a national championship. How did that happen? And one of the things that got me was, the factors that make that happen are Boise State is the pro sports team in town. There's no competition from the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, or hockey. It's evident when you get there. It's bleed blue. It's what's next. It's go Broncos. So they have undying support, no competition, people who are immensely proud of what has happened and the growth at Boise State, where that stadium started, where it is now. There's a crane over the north end zone, $65 million renovation going on just on the north end zone. Next, they'll pivot and do the other side of the stadium. There's just a lot of pride there, and all the sponsorship, all the corporate dollars, what little there are in Boise, all pointed in the same direction. Second thing you had all this continuity of coaching from Dan Hawkins and Pokey, go back to Pokey Allen back in the day, all the way to Chris Peterson, and now to Spencer Danielson. You've got all of this synergy and continuity that of guys who get it, coaches who get it, administrators who get it, who want to go for it, who aren't afraid of risk. And that sort of lends to the third thing. Friday night comes along. ESPN has contracts with the SEC, the Big Ten, others, Pac-12. They're not allowed to play Friday night games at that time. They said to the WAC, hey, will you play a Friday night game? Can you find a team that would be willing to do it? We want to try putting a game on Friday nights against high school football. Yeah. Boise State goes, we'll do it. Hand raise. They decide they're going to do it, and they get $100,000 bonus for every game they play on a Friday night. They like that. But they go further, and this goes to the community support and all that synergy. They turn to high school football in the state, and they say, look, could you move your games to Thursdays and Saturdays? We want to play on Friday night, and we don't want to cannibalize the high school out of respect for you guys. And by the way, we'll open our stadium. You can play your home games throughout the season inside of at Bronco Stadium. And so the high schools in the area played Thursdays and Saturdays. Everybody's on board with it. I think it's fascinating to kind of look at that, and a whole bunch more that I wrote about, but to look at that and you go, oh, that's how they became Boise State. Like a lot of places don't have that synergy, don't have that. Their places are afraid of risk. They're afraid to take a leap. Boise State, not afraid to risk.
I love it. It's a great series. Go check it out. JohnCanzano.com. Again, part one of a series that's going to include John visiting all of the Pac-12 schools, the new world Pac-12. JohnCanzano.com. Also, check out the latest story that just came out this morning about Oregon State, Washington State, as we led off the top of the show with it, having the final say there of all decisions on expansion media deals, Pac-12 enterprises. They're in the new grant of rights deal that they signed, that John was able to obtain, and again wrote about it up at JohnCanzano.com. All right, stop working so hard. All right.
All right.
You're making everybody look bad.
You got to go to the gym. That's where I need to go.
Hey, go to the gym. What is it? Leg day?
It's got to be big chest day.
Yeah, it is.
Can you go with me? You just yell out "big chest" while I'm working out.
That's what I'm going to do. Big chest. You have
bring a jug. Bring one of the jugs of water.
How big is the size of the water jug that you bring?
I drink out of the faucet, man.
Yeah, you do.
Shows me. Yeah, like a
All right,
dog
thanks,
at a
John.
park.
Great
All right,
work,
man. Take care.
There he is, John Canzano. JohnCanzano.com.